There is a traditional wooden house tucked away in a quiet alley of Kyoto, surrounded by the intense, oppressive heat of late July. The air outside is incredibly thick, heavy with almost 100% humidity, making the afternoon feel like a damp, suffocating blanket wrapped around the city. Yet inside, a young woman sits on a tatami mat, looking completely serene, her skin glowing but perfectly comfortable, reading a book in the gentle breeze of an open window. She does not rely on a loud, vibrating machine to blast freezing artificial air into her face, and her nervous system remains in a state of deep, unwavering peace despite the boiling world outside. And somewhere on the opposite side of the globe, in a modern apartment facing the blinding afternoon sun, another person is fighting a losing battle against the summer season. This person is sitting directly beneath an air conditioning unit running at full capacity, wrapped in a thick hoodie because the artificial cold is piercing their bones, yet they still feel a heavy, inescapable exhaustion draining their energy. They wake up every morning during the summer with a dry throat, a stiff neck, and a lingering brain fog, caught in a violent pendulum swing between the blazing heat outdoors and the freezing, sterile winter they have artificially created indoors. What if the stark difference between these two people has absolutely nothing to do with modern technology, expensive climate control systems, or some genetic tolerance for hot weather? By the end of our time together today, you will understand exactly why your relentless fight against the summer heat is actually making you feel worse, how traditional Western cooling methods invisibly destroy your vitality, and how a few ancient, almost invisible Japanese habits can instantly harmonize your body with the season. Before we move on to these quiet Japanese solutions, we need to talk about a poisonous idea that we have carried inside us since childhood regarding our relationship with nature. We have been convinced that the environment is an enemy that must be dominated, and that the only way to survive the summer is to build a hermetically sealed fortress of artificial cold around ourselves. Write in the comments right now how many times you have cranked up your air conditioning to the lowest possible setting after a walk outside, only to feel a heavy wave of lethargy and sickness wash over you an hour later. We all do this because the modern appliance industry has sold us the illusion that extreme temperature control equals comfort and luxury. But your summer exhaustion, your sinus headaches, and your constant reliance on the hum of the air conditioner are absolutely not your fault. It is the direct consequence of a deeply flawed system that teaches us to violently fight our physical reality rather than gently adapting to it. When you step from a 90-degree street into a 60-degree office, you are subjecting your delicate nervous system to a brutal biological shock. You think you are saving yourself from the heat, but in reality, you are quietly exhausting your body, forcing it to expend massive amounts of energy trying to regulate a core temperature that is constantly being thrown out of balance. But this is only the first domino in understanding the profound Japanese approach to seasonal living, which begins not with fighting the heat, but with a quiet, respectful surrender. In Japanese culture, there is a deep philosophical understanding that summer is not a disease to be cured with technology, but a passing condition that requires a shift in our daily rhythm. One of the most common and damaging Western reactions to intense heat is the immediate craving for ice-cold water, usually filled to the brim with frozen cubes. We have been aggressively marketed this image of a sweating glass of ice water as the ultimate summer salvation, leading us to believe that throwing freezing liquid into our stomachs will somehow cool our bodies down. However, the Japanese essentialist approach reveals a completely different, almost paradoxical truth about human biology and internal temperature regulation. When you drink ice-cold water, you are sending a sudden, alarming signal to your internal organs that you are freezing, which forces your body to actively generate more heat to warm the liquid to your core temperature. Instead of cooling you down, that heavy glass of ice water quietly ignites an internal furnace, leaving you feeling even hotter, more bloated, and incredibly fatigued just a few minutes later. The Japanese solution to this invisible burden is completely counterintuitive to the Western mind, as they traditionally consume warm or room temperature liquids during the peak of summer, most notably a roasted barley tea known as mujicha. By drinking something that aligns with your internal body temperature, you bypass the biological shock, allowing your body to gently absorb the hydration without triggering any stressful metabolic reactions. You eliminate the friction between your internal state and the external world, quietly cooling your system from the inside out without demanding any extra effort from your exhausted organs. And here something else happens, something that almost no one talks about when discussing the mechanics of keeping cool in a modern home. We are obsessed with cooling the empty air around us, wasting enormous amounts of electricity and drying out our skin to drop the temperature of an entire room just so our bodies feel comfortable. The Japanese approach focuses on absolute essentialism, recognizing that you do not need to cool the entire house if you simply know how to cool the flowing rivers of your own blood. There are specific pulse points on the human body, located on the wrists, the back of the neck, behind the knees, and at the ankles, where your blood vessels sit extremely close to the surface of your skin. Instead of turning on a loud machine, a person practicing this quiet philosophy will simply run their wrists under cool tap water for 30 seconds, or place a slightly damp, cool towel on the back of their neck. Because the blood flows continuously through these shallow points, cooling them acts like a quiet, invisible engine that immediately circulates a refreshing chill throughout your entire body. This method requires almost zero energy, creates no artificial noise, and instantly lifts the heavy physical weight of the heat without drying out your respiratory system. If this approach, and the realization of how aggressively you have been shocking your body, has already changed your perception of summer cooling, subscribe so you do not miss the next unobvious habits that quietly restore your natural balance. As we move from the internal body to the external environment, we encounter one of the most beautiful and poetic Japanese cooling traditions, known as Uchimizu. Uchimizu translates to the scattering of water, and it is the ancient practice of taking a wooden bucket of water and splashing it onto the hot pavement, the streets, and the gardens surrounding a home during the late afternoon. To the untrained Western eye, pouring water on hot concrete might seem like a pointless chore, but it is actually a masterful manipulation of natural physics and thermodynamics. As the thin layer of water begins to evaporate from the scorching ground, it undergoes a phase change that actively pulls thermal energy directly out of the air, significantly lowering the ambient temperature of the immediate microclimate. This creates a gentle, cooling breeze that flows naturally into the open windows of the home, replacing the oppressive, stagnant heat with a fresh, earthy atmosphere. But the true magic of Uchimizu lies in its philosophy of subtraction and reuse, because this water is almost never clean tap water, but rather leftover water from washing rice, rinsing vegetables, or collecting the morning rain. It is a quiet act of respect for resources, a ritual that acknowledges the heat and works with it, rather than turning on an exhaust fan that pumps more hot air out into the already suffocating city streets. When you practice your own version of Uchimizu on your balcony or patio, you are not just cooling the physical air, you are engaging in a mindful, grounding activity that slows down your racing thoughts and brings you into the present moment. But the Japanese mastery of summer goes even deeper, touching on a fascinating psychological phenomenon that completely changes how the human brain perceives physical discomfort. We often forget that feeling hot is not just a physical reality, but a neurological interpretation, meaning your brain can be quietly tricked into feeling cool through sensory manipulation. In Japan, the arrival of summer is accompanied by the delicate crystalline sound of Furin, which are small glass or cast iron wind chimes hung from the eaves of houses and balconies. These chimes are designed to catch even the faintest, almost imperceptible whisper of a breeze, producing a high, clear note that cuts through the heavy, humid air. For generations, The Japanese brain has been culturally conditioned to associate the sound of the Furin with the presence of a refreshing breeze, creating a powerful psychological placebo effect. When a person sitting in a hot room hears that quiet chime, their brain instantly registers the idea of wind, and their subjective experience of the temperature actually drops, bringing a sudden wave of mental relief. You can apply this exact same psychological hack by introducing visual and auditory elements of coolness into your space, stripping away the heavy, warm textures that weigh down your mind. The Japanese practice extreme visual minimalism in the summer, rolling up thick carpets, putting away heavy curtains, and replacing them with breathable bamboo mats and sheer flowing fabrics that visually communicate lightness and air. When your eyes see dark, cluttered spaces filled with heavy fabrics, your brain interprets the environment as warm and suffocating, adding an invisible layer of psychological heat to your physical reality. By quietly removing these items and embracing negative space, you lift a massive cognitive burden from your mind, allowing your eyes to rest on clean, uncluttered surfaces that feel naturally crisp and refreshing. This essentialist mindset extends to everything from the way you dress to the way you light your home in the evening, moving away from harsh, heat-generating overhead bulbs to soft, low-placed lamps that mimic the cool glow of the moon. Every small, unnoticeable subtraction in your environment compounds into a massive shift in your overall comfort, turning your home from a stressful, chaotic oven into a tranquil, shaded sanctuary. We must also rethink our relationship with sweat, which Western culture has demonized as something dirty and embarrassing that must be stopped at all costs with clinical antiperspirants and freezing air. In truth, sweating is your body's brilliant, quiet engine of survival, an elegant biological mechanism designed to perfectly regulate your core temperature through the natural process of evaporation. When you constantly wipe away your sweat or artificially block it, you are dismantling your own evolutionary cooling system, trapping the heat inside your body and forcing your heart to work twice as hard to keep you safe. The traditional Japanese approach is to wear loose, highly breathable natural fibers like linen or light cotton, which do not trap the moisture against the skin but allow the air to flow freely, facilitating that crucial evaporation. You slowly begin to realize that the intense discomfort of summer is mostly generated by your own resistance to it, by your exhausting attempts to pretend that it is still winter inside your living room. When you finally stop fighting, when you turn off the roaring machines and open a window to the evening breeze, you experience a profound sense of emotional release. You stop treating the season as an enemy to be conquered, and instead, you embrace it as a temporary, heavy blanket that requires you to simply slow down your pace and lower your expectations of constant productivity. You learn to move a little slower, to speak a little softer, and to let the natural rhythm of the hot afternoon dictate your actions, rather than trying to force a high-energy routine into a climate that demands rest. The ultimate secret to surviving the heat without the brutal side effects of modern air conditioning is simply returning to a state of biological and environmental harmony. You gently cool your blood instead of the entire room. You drink warm tea to soothe your overworked organs. You invite the wind with the sound of a chime, and you let go of the invisible burden of constant temperature control. By applying these ancient, quiet Japanese habits, you will completely transform your experience of the summer months, ending the cycle of dry throats, artificial chills, and lethargic afternoons. You will find yourself resting comfortably in the shade of your own essentialist life, deeply connected to the natural world, breathing easily. You will enjoy the true, unhurried peace that can only be found when you stop fighting the invisible forces of nature.